Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 174. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the evening of Thursday, June the 4th, from the Hampton Inn in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yes, those of you who listened to my podcast last week maybe remember I told you that I'm going back onto the road for the first time since early March. I was going to do that on Tuesday or Monday, June the 1st, and I'm there. I'm doing it, and it's been interesting at best. The purpose of this podcast is to report to you, dear listeners, on what things are like outside of your little realm, your little area. We've been sheltering in place. We've been being good boys and girls, not going too far, not associating with many people. I've ventured away from the confines of cozy, homey East Central Missouri, and I actually traveled through Illinois, through Indiana, throughout much of Ohio, then back through Indiana, Illinois, and back home to East Central Missouri. Again, the purpose of this podcast is to let you know what things are like out there. You may have heard things on Facebook. You may have seen things on television. You may have heard things on the radio. I'm going to give you a firsthand report as to what I saw in big cities, small towns, medium-sized cities, big companies, small companies, how people are doing things, what they're doing, what they're not doing, how it's affecting their bottom line, how it's affecting their just their way of life, okay? And this trip was a driving trip. I'm not ready to get on an airplane quite yet. Maybe a while before I'm ready to get onto an airplane. I thought it was rather brave that I got into a car and went across 3 or 4 states, but it was necessary. The day job, as most of you know, I sell industrial items, and if you're going to sell things to people, you need to see them face to face. You need to see their application. You need to see how you can help them. You need to look at things that they do and offer them firsthand a vehicle that can help them. They have to have a reason to buy something from you. That reason just can't be because you're a nice guy. That reason has to be because they have a need, you have a solution, problem solved, and everybody comes away happier and smiling. So that's what I did this week. I went ahead and got in a car and ventured out. How have things changed since before? Well, the change started with the rental car. Okay, early on Monday morning, the trophy wife dropped me off in front of the Enterprise Rental Car Center, and I love Enterprise. Good company, good people. They have good cars for a fair price. But of course, they, like everyone else, has changed the way they do business because of the pandemic. Okay, so normally I'm dropped off at Enterprise. I go in there. We exchange our pleasantries. They welcome me back because I'm a preferred member. I ask them, what kind of car do you have for me? They say, well, what would you like? Well, what can you give me? Well, this, or that. How about this? Great. We sign the paperwork. We check out the car, and I'm on my way. They don't do things that way anymore. I made my reservation. I got there a little bit early, maybe a few minutes, and asked them, okay, here I am. They said, you got to wait in line, and someone will be with you shortly. Okay, so you stand outside of the building. You don't go into the office, and then somebody comes and asks you how they can help. You give them your name. They say, oh, okay, well, your car's not ready. You have the blue Altima, and the Altima is not quite ready. So I say, well, what do you mean it's not ready? They say, well, see that line of cars getting cleaned? Yours is fourth in line. I said, well, okay, I'm looking at a parking lot full of about 75 different cars that are clean. Can I have one of those? And the answer is no. You get the blue Altima, and you'll have to wait your turn. Okay, well, how long will this be? They said it'll be about 40 minutes. I had already waited 20. So that's right. I had to wait an hour for my car. Okay, that's the way things are. That's the way things are going to be. I understand. These folks are just trying to do their job the way enterprises set things up. Everybody's trying to be safe. I get it. Deep sigh, deep breath. That's okay, though. I do have to use the restroom, though, because I had had a lot of coffee that morning. Sorry, our restroom's closed. Okay, I can't wait another 40 minutes. So since it's going to be 40 minutes, I walk down the street to the gas station, use their toilet, come back. Of course, the car's not ready, so no harm, no foul. After an hour, I get the car and I head out on my trip. Well, it's summertime. And the one thing that we can all count on the roads in the Midwestern U.S. in the summertime is construction, okay? And there was lots of construction. In fact, I-70, which I took all the way into Columbus, Ohio, was all under construction. However, there wasn't a lot of traffic. So really, there were very few traffic delays. Now, the speed limit is 65 to 70 most ways. Sometimes I had to slow it down to 55. But it wasn't stop and go. It wasn't a 30-mile-an-hour construction project. It actually went pretty well. So because there weren't many cars, because there wasn't much traffic, there weren't many travelers on the road, I actually made pretty good time, even though through the entire state of Indiana and most of Illinois was solid construction. So because there were less cars, less people out there, I actually made pretty good time. However, my first mishap, I guess I should say, of the trip started as soon as I crossed the bridge into Illinois. They were patching holes, laying tar, doing something, and they covered them with gravel. Lots of gravel. A truck in front of me took a piece of that gravel, threw up, and it busted my windshield. So I'm probably a half hour into the trip, and I have a broken windshield. And this isn't just a chip. This is a 2.5-foot long crack that starts in the upper left-hand corner and goes all the way over almost to the other side. Okay, this isn't a chip that I can talk my way out of. This is a busted windshield that I have to pay for. Okay, no big deal. Let's just make the best of it. Now, the whole COVID-19 thing I knew was going to make business travel creepy, okay? And I knew that. What I had not banked on was the civil unrest due to the George Floyd shootings. So as I'm making my way into Indiana, I get alerts on my phone. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana. As I got closer to Columbus, Indiana, all had curfews due to violent looters and anarchists who were causing mayhem in those three cities. Okay, well, there you go. I'm staying in Columbus. I'm staying in Fort Wayne, and I'm driving through Indianapolis. I never planned on this. Sure, I had planned on COVID-19 making things difficult, but I had never planned on looters, terrorists, and anarchists to cause me problems as well. Now, you notice I didn't say the protesters, okay? And that's purposeful on my part. I did that on purpose, I should say. Is purposeful even a word? But I did that on purpose, okay? The reason for these curfews was not because of the protesters. It wasn't even because of violent protesters. Knocking the windows out of stores has nothing to do about protesting the Floyd killings, okay? This had everything to do with the looters and the anarchists and the troublemakers, okay? Not the protesters. Columbus, Indiana was under a curfew. In fact, I had a problem in Columbus because as I pulled in, I asked the guy, I said, look, what time is the curfew? And curfew's 10 o'clock, but all restaurants are going to be shut by 8. I said, okay, well, fine. I'll just eat dinner at the restaurant here. It's 6:30 by now. And the guy says, nah, we closed our restaurant. I said, I thought you said your restaurant was open. So yes, yesterday was the first day we opened it. Today we closed it due to the riots and the curfew. Okay, that's okay. There were several restaurants within walking distance. I walked up, I got a quick meal, and I came back. Now, this part of Columbus, Ohio, where I stayed, it's in the Worthington area. It's in the northern part of Columbus. 270 makes a big round loop through the town of Columbus, similar to the way it does in the St. Louis area. Okay? And the northern area, Worthington, it's got a big steel factory there. There's a Anheuser-Busch brewery there. A lot of things in the Worthington area. Very industrial, very progressive, very cool place. That's where I like to stay up there. Plenty of places to eat, plenty of places to walk. It's a vibrant business type area. Okay? Not this time. Next to my hotel was a big Marcus Theater complex. Next to the Marcus Theater complex was a large catering business that had 7 trucks sitting outside. Both were closed. The parking lots were empty. And along with the normally open and vibrant restaurants and bars, some of them were doing takeout, carry-out. Many or most were closed. Many of them had for sale or rent signs on them. In other words, they weren't going to reopen. Okay? It wasn't going to happen. The DoubleTree where I stayed was less than half full. The Holiday Inn Express that was right next to the DoubleTree had 14 cars in it. That's all. Now, this time of year, you've got to remember 2 things. First of all, business travel is at a peak. And so is vacation travel. A lot of people go on vacation in June, okay? This is June now, folks. People should be on vacation. These hotels should be full. They weren't. They were half empty at best. I did make sure there was going to be coffee in the morning. There was. Wanted to make sure there was going to be breakfast in the morning. They said that there was, but it would be somewhat truncated. Okay. Normally, the DoubleTree has a nice cook-to-order breakfast. There'd be something less than that. I get it. So I get up early, about 5 o'clock, have my coffee, do my thing, go down to breakfast at 6:30, which normally at this DoubleTree, getting there for breakfast at 6:30, you're not going to get a great table. But that's okay. They have a lot of tables there. And I just need a table to myself. If there's no tables, I can sit at the bar, watch television. Okay? It wasn't hard to get a good table. In fact, it wasn't hard to get a table at all. In fact, at 6:30, I was the only person in the restaurant. I was the only customer. And there was a young lady sitting, it looked like she was doing her homework or some type of paperwork, and I asked her, I smiled, I said, hey, do I have a problem getting a table today? Just trying to be silly. And she looked at me very seriously and said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, can I just sit any place? She says, yeah, you can sit any place. I said, well, how does breakfast work this morning? They said it was different than normal. And again, she looked at me with a puzzled look and said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, how does breakfast work? And she said, we've got a few things wrapped up over there. You can have what you like. And I walked over there, and there were about 3 tubs of yogurt. There were about 4 bowls of prepackaged cereal, a couple of slices of toast that were wrapped up, or bread that was wrapped up in cellophane that you could toast yourself. That was about it. And some fruit. That was it. That was going to be breakfast. And so I did what I wanted to. I had a little breakfast, and I went back to my room. These companies, I should say, are having problems. They're having troubles. Because think about it. COVID-19 shuts you down on a government order. The government says you cannot open up. Then you open back up to limited capacity. The government limits your hours due to a curfew. Anarchists burn, loot, and destroy. When that happens, small businesses fold. The larger ones will be okay, but I